marriage if you don't do what you're supposed to do before marriage. If you'll look at, for example, Ruth and Boaz, there are principles in the book of Ruth that are really powerful and profound. And at some point, we'll need to compare what Samson did when he saw the woman he wanted to have as a boo, and what Boaz did when he wanted the woman he saw as a boo. Two different approaches, and they had different outcomes because they had different approaches. Unbiblical approach, the marriage lasts 7 days. A biblical approach, Boaz and Ruth, they hook up the right way. Like, let me give you an example. Um, how did he know that, how does she know he was a good man and that he was a man that you would want to marry? Well, look at this. I think I shared this with you already. He wanted to know her background. He wanted to know her values. He wanted to know what her ideas was. In other words, he wanted to know something about the woman herself. Samson, he just looked at the woman as a commodity. I mean, she was a piece of property, and he wasn't concerned about the partnership. I mean, basically, the bottom line was the guy wanted the woman because he wanted to have sex with her. And, Boaz wanted a relationship with Ruth. And so, she looking at him. Remember, she comes home and Naomi says, where did you glean today? In the field of Boaz. Oh, wait a minute. You got to hook up, holler if you hear me, hey, because you don't glean this much. And he put me in the field behind him. In other words, this was a man who provided for a woman, cared about her enough to make sure that, she was okay. And I mean, a lot of other things he did that really demonstrated. But we'll get to that. Let's go back to Samson. So we said that Samson had a wrong criteria. That Samson was an individual who needed to understand. Look, marriage is made in heaven, but the maintenance is done on earth. And so here it is. He had a whimsical conflict management style. What do you mean by that, Pastor Ford? The ability to resolve conflict is the single greatest asset in a marriage other than commitment to Christ. How you handle conflict will determine how conflict handles you. And a lot of people just don't handle conflict the correct way. They just don't. Conflict should make us grow, not make us go. So here's what happens. He enters into that deal with those guys, and here's what they tell him. They say, look, if you don't find out what your husband's riddle is, then we're going to kill you, your dad, and your whole family. So she says, and Samson's wife wept before him and said, you hate me. You don't love me. You have put forth a riddle unto the children of my people and have not told it to me. And he said unto her, behold, I have not told it to my mother nor my father. Shall I tell it to thee? And she wept before him. 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the seventh day, he told her, because she lay sore upon him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people. They're in a conflict. Okay, so what happens? She doesn't go to her husband and say, look, we have a problem. No, not I have a problem. Because here's what people fail to realize. Look, when you marry somebody, their issues now become your issues. That's it. Most people want marriage to be a 50-50 relationship. Well, 50-50, where do you cross the line? Where do you make the line? Where's 50%? No, it's 100% commitment. Now, marriage is a union between two forgivers. Let me see, let me put it this way. In Canada, they have these wild musk oxen. And when they are attacked by wolves, they put their family in a circle. Then they put their heads together and they kick out against the wolves. But there are wild jackasses, they do exactly the opposite. They put their family in the center. But what they do is they put their heads out and they kick their family instead of kick. In other words, we have to attack the issue and not attack each other. So notice what she does. She uses tears. And we know by what she's doing, she is manipulating him in the midst of the conflict. Let me put it this way. I'm trying to think how I can let you know this. See, marriage goes through phases. And here they are now. They're past the first phase. First phase is always the romance phase. That's where, the honey is oozing out of the honeycomb. As a matter of fact, it's called a honeymoon. That means sweet month. And usually that would be how long a honeymoon lasts. The average honeymoon in the marriage, where you can't do nothing wrong, where you're just beginning to discover who you really are hooked up with, lasts anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And then the honeymoon's over. And so it's the romance phase. It's like the one man said to his wife, she said, honey, I can only cook 2 dishes. And he said, oh, that's okay, baby, I don't care. And she said, well, here's one of my favorites, because I can only cook spaghetti or strawberry shortcake. And he looked at it and he said, well, okay, baby, that's okay. Which one is this? See, that's the honeymoon phase. But the next phase is the reality phase. That's when you begin to actually discover who you're married to. I think I already told you that usually when you're dating, you date a representative. Everybody puts their best foot forward. Now the layers, are coming off and reality sets in. You find out that his breath stinks at 6 a.m. and his feet stink at 6 p.m. You find out that, she's not Sleeping Beauty. She's just lazy as all get out. She needs to get a coconut anointing or something, an unction to clean or something. And so now that's where Samson and his wife is early. They're at the realities phase and learning who they are. And now he's learning in conflict that there is some individuals who have more influence in their relationship than he does. And she finds out that there's individuals who have more influence in his relationship than she does. And that it ought not be that way. Here's what it says, Genesis 2:24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and not ashamed. Here's what you have. It's the pillars of marriage. I do this all the time. If I ask somebody, what is the number one goal God gave for marriage? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. So I can look at the time and see if you really got it. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. God's goal for marriage is oneness. Really, yes. Well, I'm not happy. When people say I'm not happy, who said you're supposed to be? Happiness is not the goal of marriage. Oneness is. Happiness is the byproduct or one of the byproducts of oneness. Therefore, it shall become one. Now, get this. There is a numerical Hebrew word one. That's not it. It's the word that means composite oneness. It is echad, Echoid. What it literally means is this: composite oneness. So you see it, he said they brought one cluster of grapes out of the promised land. Okay, and it was talking about, yeah, it was just one, but there was many grapes on there. Okay, so it was a composite oneness. It was a cluster. So we come together, and the goal is to become one. Now, somebody facetiously said, yeah, we're trying to determine which one. No, that God put us together, and in that romance phase, hopefully we were attracted based on strengths and weaknesses. What do you mean? And that we understand that God said to Adam, I will make for him a helpmeet. Now, the word helpmeet is the word easer, not skeezer, easer. It means one who complements and one who completes. So my wife was my complement. You know, my sugar babe complimented me. And when I found out she was a compliment, not a complainer, she was a compliment, and to make me complete, it was then that I began to embrace her. And our conflict began to dissipate. Now, I ain't saying we didn't have it, because we got into it like everybody else. But I used to say, we don't argue. We just had heated fellowship. And so what happens? Okay, here's what I mean. Once I found out, it really helped our conflict. What did you find out, Pastor Ford? Glad you asked. You ask intelligent questions. I found out I am an extrovert. I know you didn't know that. Yeah. I'm an extrovert. My wife was an introvert. Guess what? We complimented each other. She would, and I'm telling you, when I would be in the pulpit and talking and say too much, she'd be in that front row, cut that, cut that, cut that. And then she'd be on the wall because she was an introvert. And I said, you don't want people to think that you're not friendly, and pull her off the wall. I am a muser. I like to think through things. She was able to think on her feet very quickly. And so she'd say, such and such and such and such when we talk about something. Well, I got this. So I would reject what she had to say. That always led to conflict. Let me tell you why. Because it takes me time to process and to think through. But because she's able to come up with stuff quick, God gave her to me so that we get into issues. Some things we don't have to and don't have 2, 3, 4, 5 days for me to muse on. Some things a decision has to be made right away. And she was very quick. And then I realized that. When I was getting ready, since I had been laid off, to turn my car over to my brother-in-law and let him take up the payments. And my wife, I looked at it and said, okay, these things could go wrong, but this is my brother-in-law. My wife said, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And I had enough spiritual maturity to begin to process those two things and say, no, I didn't. And she said, these are dangers. And because of that, because this brother lost his job about 2 months after I did, because he had been messing with heroin. I said, when that happened, I said, wow, I would have been in bad shape, because I still would have had to pay the note, and I wouldn't even have had the car. And so I began to understand, man, you know what? I need to talk to her about these things that come in. And when we would have issues that I would need time to contemplate on, I would ask her, what do you think? And we began to come together in our conflict. And sometimes it takes my musing. Sometimes, in fact, she was quick on her feet. And so dealing with the conflict. One guy told me one time, hey, what's going on? She ready to go? I'm ready to let her. Conflict should not make us go. Conflict should make us grow. Conflict in a marriage relationship is just like conflict in in our Christian walk. We grow in a conflict. You don't believe me? Romans 5:2. Tribulation worketh patience. So those of you who've been praying for patience, you're asking God to put you in tribulation. Why? Because it builds patience. James says it this way. James chapter 1, 3 and 4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptation, knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you may be complete and entire, lacking nothing. That's the way it is in marriage too. That we had a stronger bond because we attacked the problem and we didn't attack each other. A way stronger bond because we didn't attack each other. We attacked the problem. How does that work? Let me do it this way. Let me close with this. The guy was jogging, and on this jog, he saw a butterfly emerging out of a chrysalis. So he goes over and he says, "Wow, look at him struggling. I'm gonna help him out." So he cracks the chrysalis all the way open, and the butterfly now has freedom. He keeps on running. The next day he comes back. I'm gonna take that little chrysalis and hold on to it because I helped that butterfly. I always have it to say, I helped the life be born into this world that's able to soar. When he came by, to his amazement, it was just like he left it. The chrysalis was open, and the butterfly was in the chrysalis, wings spread, but it was dead. So he had an entomologist friend that's a bug doctor, y'all. He said to me, he said, what happened? He said, listen, you need to understand that the struggle, listen to me now, the struggle was part of the process for him breaking free of the chrysalis. His body secretes a fluid when he's straining to break it open. And that fluid goes to the wings and it enables him to fly. You circumvented the process. Get this now. If you ain't married, better listen, because this is for Christians too. You circumvented the process. So the fluid that goes to the wings, the strength of the wing to make it fly, didn't do it. And because you did that, that butterfly died. Because the struggle is part of the development for it being able to leave the earth and be in the air and say, I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. That's the way it is in marriage. And Samson and his wife did not have that. Let me just tell you, marriage is a union of two forgivers. If you're not ready to forgive, if you're single, please don't get married. Because people talk about, it's love, it's compassion. Yes, it is. That's a part of it, very real part of it. But conflict will determine whether or not your marriage develops and grows. I'm telling you, it's how you handle conflict will determine how the conflict will handle you. And listen, every one of the reasons why people give for divorce is based on their inability to resolve the conflict in each of those areas. What are they? Let me drop them down, push them. Communication, finances, sex, children, in-laws, when your in-laws become outlaws, household chores, careers, especially dual careers, selfishness, and unrealistic expectations. I'm gonna cover all of those in a seminar style. So you stay tuned. Listen, follow, subscribe, and like. Share that. Download my app. Check me out, James Ford Jr. Ministries.org. And remember, Maranatha, our Lord is coming. So I'll see you here, there, or in the air. Grace and peace.